July 20th, 1969. Humanity does the impossible. A man steps onto another world, and back on Earth, 600 million people hold their breath in front of their screens. It's the proudest moment in our history, a triumph of science, of courage, of hope. We tell this story like a fairy tale. The brave astronauts, the brilliant engineers, the flag planted on the moon. But there's a part of that story they leave out of the history books. Because behind that giant leap for mankind, there was a shadow, a secret buried under all the glory. The rocket that carried those men to the moon didn't come out of nowhere. It was born somewhere much, much darker. It was born in the middle of the deadliest war in human history, built by a regime that murdered millions. And the genius who designed it once worked for Adolf Hitler himself. Let that sink in for a second. The same mind that helped build weapons of terror for the Nazis is the same mind that later took America all the way to the moon. So here's the uncomfortable question, the one nobody really wants to ask out loud. Without Hitler, without the Nazis, would we have ever reached the moon at all? The answer is stranger and a lot darker than you'd expect. So stick around, because once you know this, you'll never look at the moon landing the same way again. To understand this story, we have to go back, not to 1969, but to 1942, to Nazi Germany in the middle of the Second World War. The war is raging, and in a secret facility on the Baltic coast, a group of engineers is building something the world has never seen before. A weapon, but not just any weapon. It's called the V2. And it's the first man-made object ever to touch the edge of space. Think about that. Decades before anyone dreamed of astronauts, a rocket was already climbing higher than any machine in history, nearly 100 kilometers up, brushing the very edge of the cosmos, and then falling back down onto cities, onto homes, onto people. Because the V2 wasn't built to explore the stars. It was built to kill. Fired at London, at Antwerp, it came down faster than the speed of sound. No warning, no siren, just a sudden explosion out of nowhere. Thousands of civilians died. And behind this terrifying machine stood one man. A young, brilliant engineer, obsessed since childhood with one single dream: space travel. His name was Wernher von Braun. He didn't dream of bombs. He dreamed of rockets that could reach the moon. But to build his rockets, he made a deal with a regime built on terror. He joined the Nazi Party. He wore the uniform. And he let his genius serve the darkest cause in modern history. One dream, two faces, and a price that was about to become unspeakable. Here's the part of the story that's hardest to hear, the part that turns admiration into something much colder. Building thousands of these rockets was an enormous task, and the Nazi regime didn't use paid workers to do it. They used prisoners, thousands of them, forced to work in an underground factory called Mittelbau Dora. The conditions there were beyond cruel. People worked in freezing tunnels with almost no food, no rest, no mercy. And here is the terrible truth that few people know. More people died building the V2 than were ever killed by it. Let that sink in. The rocket that would one day carry humanity toward the stars was built on the suffering of tens of thousands of innocent people. This is the shadow behind the dream. and it never fully goes away. Then the war ended. Germany collapsed. And suddenly the world's most dangerous scientists were up for grabs. Both the Americans and the Soviets raced to capture them first, not to punish them, but to use them. The Americans launched a secret operation. Its name? Paperclip. Quietly, they brought around 1,600 German scientists to the United States, including von Braun himself. Their Nazi past cleaned up, erased from the files, rewritten. The man who built weapons for Hitler was about to be handed the keys to America's future in space. It sounds impossible. It sounds like a movie. But every word of it is true. And it leads to one of the most staggering turnarounds in all of history. So there he was, Werner von Braun, once the architect of Hitler's rockets, now working for the United States. And this is where the story becomes almost unbelievable, because the Americans didn't just keep him around, they put him in charge. They handed him the most ambitious dream in human history, to put a man on the moon. Von Braun took everything he had learned from the V2 and dreamed bigger, much bigger. He designed a monster, a rocket called the Saturn V, still to this day, the most powerful machine humans have ever built, as tall as a 36-story building, powerful enough to lift 3 men all the way to another world. And on July 20th, 1969, it worked. Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon. The whole world celebrated. And standing quietly in the control room was the man whose journey began in a Nazi weapons lab. So let's finally answer the question. Without Hitler, without the war, without that dark chapter, would we have reached the moon? The honest answer is probably not. Not that fast. Not that way. The technology that took us to the stars was born from a technology built to destroy. Our greatest achievement grew out of our darkest hour. And maybe that's the most human thing of all, that the same species capable of such horror is also capable of reaching the moon. If this blew your mind, subscribe, because history is full of secrets like this one. And I've got more waiting for you. Thanks for watching, and keep looking up.